All right, everybody, we are live for another episode of the Key to Games podcast here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. I am Josh Blaser, and joining me, my co-host, who's currently working on the game Samurai Pig, Joshua Reyes. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent right now. Excited to be talking about this. I knew there's some news with Bloodborne coming about. It's kind of brought it about, so I am pumped. Let's get going, my friend.
Yeah, so I did lower my bit rate on OBS. I'm hoping maybe that will fix things. I'm going to also try hooking up a new Ethernet cord probably later tonight, as everyone is blaming everyone else in terms of what the problems are. So
That's how it goes. That's how it goes.
hmm But our topic is going to be discussing what makes a game memorable. As Joshua just said, Bloodborne is celebrating its 7-year anniversary, if you really want to feel old right now.
Yeah. Young? I don't know. You can feel young.
hmm But,
But yeah, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead, Fit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I saw that, and to me, it's I did make me feel a little bit old because to me that game still feels so fresh, right? When you're talking about
hmm
like timeless games, it literally feels like that game could be released right now and still kind of fit in. I don't know, but it's so timeless in a way to me that when you think about it, it doesn't seem old at all, right? You know what I mean?
hmm
It's like 7 years old, but I feel like it just came out yesterday because it's such a fresh in my my mind because it sticks with you. So
hmm Yep, and I mean, like, for me, I think I still like Bloodborne the best out of all the Souls-likes that I played.
yeah, it is the best, and I think like you could probably do a ranking, and you might be it'd be like I honestly I'd probably go like Bloodborne, Elden Ring, and then maybe like Dark Souls, one of the Souls underneath that, right? Because Bloodborne, to me, they just got everything right with the combat and stuff like that, and that's what makes it stand so timeless. Right now, if I put in like my Bloodborne save and I jump into somewhere and I try and do some PvP, there's people still right now playing PvP like that. The community is so active, and so that's probably a very important thing for a game to become timeless, right? Is
hmm
community, and that's like with the new style of games that we have now, or we're allowed to play online with our friends through even if we have different devices, right? Cross platform play and stuff like that, depending on it. So it really allows us to extend the game life and create a community. So now we have some really cool games that are entering some strange games, like for example, like CS:GO,
hmm
that came out in 2012, right? It's a pretty old game. That's 10 years. Or Dota 2, that's a 9-year-old game. They're still hanging around. So if you go to Steam, they're still like the most played games on there, right? And so because they were able to develop a community, and so a community can really keep it going in that fact. Yeah, Dwarf Fortress for 20 years. You know what I mean? That's
hmm
amazing. As Thomas Rabbit said, it's one of those games that gameplay, and then again, there's a massive community around Fortress. I know the players are rabid fan base, and they love that game. So, right, I'm sure Robert Thomas could attest to that.
hmm And getting these games to be like that level of being memorable, it really does come down to, you know, something special about them. And
Right.
it is, I think, that difference. What we've seen from a game that could be a commercial success, your Call of Duties, your Battlefields, even like some Nintendo titles as well, versus those games that they're still being remembered to this very day. There's a reason why, like, the retro gaming scene is still very much
Yeah.
preoccupied with, the greats, the original
Mhm.
Mario's.
The original
What was it?
Mario's.
Vagrant. Was it a Vagrant story that
Favorite
PS?
story.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm still waiting for another Parasite Eve because I really love that game from back in the day.
Wow, right on, man. Right on. That's why that's the Council of the Josh agrees.
Yeah.
Waiting for-
and but the question I think remains is, why do games like what we just said still are being talked about, while a Call of Duty, a Madden, these are games that they come out, they dominate the holiday season, and then 6 months, a year later,
Mhm.
they disappear.
Yeah, and like part of the reason, like for example, like the Call of Duty and the Madden, for example, like especially the Madden, that's year by year, right? Every year
Mm-hmm.
they have to update the roster and this and that. So it's more, those games are more consumed as on a like popcorn type thing, like I'm just gonna eat it. But they're fervent on that. That's the only game they play, right? They're gonna play Madden all year, and that's literally the, I know gamers who, that's it. That's all
Mm-hmm.
they play is Madden, and that's the only game they'll play. Won't play anything else. And then, for example, you're talking like Call of Duty, right? Like it might not, you might remember a map or a level from an all Call of Duty, like a multiplayer game, but again, they don't stick out just because they're so iterative, right? And I think they're
Mm-hmm.
designed that way to be like almost like arcade days type of money crunching type things, and that's what they're kind of designed to do. So in some essence, some games are literally made by the CEOs or whatever to say, well, they're going to buy another one in the future, right? So that's sometimes some of the issues with those games precisely. But those aren't the ones we're really focusing on. It's like, why don't some games make it? Like we remember God of War, like to this day, like the very first God of War,
Mm-hmm.
and God of War's just an amazing one, or Skyrim, GTA, even Tetris, for example. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like you were talking about the classics, and for that, the classics have just amazing gameplay. That's just, it's classic, and to this day, we study the gameplay that they designed back then for the simplicity and this moment-to-moment things that you do in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and simplicity I think is a big aspect to Thomas's question about
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Skyrim.
Skyrim. Hmm.
Yeah, like Skyrim is definitely like a game like I think it's been ported to what like every platform
Every
known to
single
man.
platform, every platform. It's even on Switch now. I mean, right, right.
Mm-hmm.
It's on everything. In that game, I mean, for one, you can mod it, right? So if your game allows the players to do things about, like, you can mod it, you can, that allows extending the life of the game, right? So if Skyrim was just a static thing and you couldn't change anything about it, you couldn't change, it might not have lasted as long, right? But first of all, you can mod it, and then but the main thing is, underneath all of that, what about Skyrim? I really wanted to ask you, what about Skyrim do you think makes it stick so long? Like Oblivion came out, but that didn't seem to stick. Skyrim came and just kind of, and I believe Oblivion was a better game in some regards, right?
Mm.
But what's so special about Skyrim that made it stick? Was it the modding, the community, right place, right time?
Mm. I think it could be a combination of the two. Again, like
Hmm.
modding is a very big deal. That has been, I think, very instrumental, especially in the PC gaming scene. For one thing, it allows these games to still be supported, with many modders releasing updated versions that make them, modern PC friendly. There's a game someone was just talking about on Twitter the other day, and I can't remember the name of it, but it did receive special mods that make it a lot more palatable or even just functional for today. But also, I think just the variability that can be introduced through modding can also greatly extend these titles. Because video games, unless we're talking about live service games, they are fixed entities. There's only
Right.
so many levels in a Mario game, or so many areas you can go in a, Bloodborne or Souls
So
like.
many quest
Mm-hmm.
dialogues you can have, right? I mean, yeah, exactly. So modding, it allows the creativity of players because they're the biggest fans of the game, right? Modders are the biggest ones, and so they're like, I want it to be this way, or I want it to change it, and so they're really in touch with the game itself, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so and by creating the mods and extending it, and it just keeps it this organic growth going for the game. So anybody that's where, if you can figure out to get anything moddable into your game, it's always a pro for any game, any indies out there. Look into that, try and add some kind of moddability, because it'll just give you a little bit more life to your game for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Thomas. I'm sure there's a lot of. Oh wait, did I put a typo in there? Oh, better
No,
double.
I don't believe it.
Oh no. Let's see. Makes the game stand the test of time.
Jo-
Key.
Joshes don't make typos. I don't.
We had a different name for that. Different kind of typo.
That's right. We use a different name.
Hmm. Yeah, my eyes have been bothering me, so I may not be seeing it. It could be in the description. Well, I'll let. I'm sure somebody will spoil that for me.
Yeah, spoiled the typo for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Um,
I think another aspect of this that's kind of interesting. I think timing, as we said, is another big point about this. Again, why retro games are so much a discussion in this.
mhm.
In that
Yeah.
there weren't a lot of those games back then. Like, we had very limited titles to play.
Yeah.
And because of that, it means that when something does pop up, you know, everyone has to talk about it. And when you have these kinds of games, you can really, like, there's a reason why we keep bringing up Skyrim, or we keep bringing up the original Smash, as Draken said right there, or Mario.
Oh,
That
the Smash. Yes. I forgot. I thought I would mention that one already. Yeah. Original Smash.
hmm that when these games do pop up, yeah, Pony, exhausts a few other parts as well. That when these games do blow up like this, and they are the first or they are the best, it does, as we said before, especially when it comes to indie games, indie game marketing, it gives them clout. And there's a reason why most people remember a Mario or a Donkey Kong Country, and they may not remember, Rocky and Bullwinkle,
Oh
or
yeah.
Plock, or the Blues Brothers platformer, or Attack of the Killer Tomatoes from back in the
Right.
day.
Right.
hmm And yeah,
Clock.
I love Plock
Clock.
too, but I'm
Clock.
pretty sure most people don't remember that one.
No.
So when it comes to kind of, I guess, modern day memorable titles, like Draken mentioned, of course, Hollow Knight. We have Undertale. Can you think of any other games, maybe in the last 5 years, that you think have kind of earned that moniker of being a classic or a timeless game? And for chat
How
as
many?
well.
How many years are we talking? Because I'm gonna have to say, like, I mean, Bloodborne, right? Number one,
hmm
Bloodborne or a Dark Souls game, I think is gonna be like you're gonna go in 20 years. You're gonna go on a list, and it's gonna be Mario's still gonna be there. And then you're gonna have Dark Souls right next to it, or Bloodborne right next to it. I think that Bloodborne is definitely one of them, and I
So,
don't know what else you got.
so
Hollow
here's the
Knight,
question.
Shovel Knight,
Yeah, maybe Shovel Knight.
maybe,
And again, it's
maybe.
hard to tell which games are going to do this because
Yeah.
we need to ponder some orbs, I think, in order to figure this out.
Yeah, yeah. Have yours came in yet? I just ordered mine.
Uh,
Okay.
Definitely not. So, so let's see. We be somewhat topical, and we'll get into trouble with this one. Do you think Elden Ring will truly go down as being memorable? And we're not, again, when we talk about memorable in this capacity, we're not necessarily equating that to quality or high reviews, because there are plenty of
Mm.
highly reviewed games that are then disappeared
Forgotten
or
about, yeah.
put onto the shelf, never to be seen again. And like, it's not so much like about like being like a masterclass game. Although again, a lot of these games that we talk about certainly are.
Are.
But it is certainly just about, I think in a lot of cases, being like that lightning in a bottle moment. That if you are that first game, or you are that game that, enters the popular zeitgeist like that. Even something like Among Us. Like, will Among Us be remembered in 10 years, 15 years? It's really hard to say.
Yeah. I don't think Among Us will. I think no. It was a very neat game. And it's just one of those ones like Among Us and Fall Guys, right? Like they blew up really massive and really fast, like very viral thing, but they didn't have a lot of meat to stick to it. For example, right? So there wasn't a lot to stick to, like on Fall Guys, and Among Us hung around for a little longer than I thought it would. but I don't think that it's going to stick around. Now back to Elden Ring. I was trying to look up the sales, and then you brought up Among Us, and I had to. um, but the sales are like they've already beaten out. I can't just like basically like every big major release game that we've had recently, and so it's selling like just amazing. So it's going mainstream, super mainstream.
Yeah,
They're
and
going to have the Dark Souls. The community is already there. Like we've been there since Demon Souls 1 growing. And so we're there. We're welcoming to the community because we want you to play.
somewhat.
It's somewhat welcoming. Somewhat welcoming.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
we leave nice notes for you everywhere in the world for you to read, little hints and stuff like that. But I think with the community already there established, and it's such a long running type of genre, or it's like with them, I think it has a lot of teeth. I think I've said this on 3 podcasts already. You're like, is it going to stick? And I'm saying, yeah, I think it's going to stick. But part of me is starting to waver that maybe like maybe Breath of the Wild might just kind of float over that. And Elden Ring would be under it as forgotten, and then somebody will bring up Bloodborne before they bring up Elden Ring. I guess you know what I mean. Once people get their fill of it, we'll see. I guess.
Mhm. And it is very difficult to try and, see when these things kind of blow up like that. And yet, like, I think Elden Ring will fall into maybe the same kind of category as Sekiro. That it's going to
Yeah.
be a very popular
Yeah.
game. It's going to be a
Yeah.
divisive game. But I don't think it's going to resonate as much long term.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's wild though is like the game feels like it should, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it feels so good, and it's like so but you were talking about the polish and the quality and everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily gonna make it stand the test of time. But like when I'm playing it, I booted it up last night, and I was trying to play it because I haven't played it in a week, which isn't a good sign, right? So I haven't played it,
Mm-hmm.
and then so I booted it up, and I was playing for like 15 minutes, and then I was like, you know what, I got other things I need to do, and so that kind of gave me a feeling like, yeah, maybe this might be a little more like you were saying, like in the Dark Souls Sekiro realm of that. At the beginning, I felt like the hype for it was really big, and it might stick around, and it might really get its teeth. But now I'm starting to kind of walk that back a little bit.
Yeah, and
Killer Instinct.
he wants me to play so I can get it killed in it on stream. And it is very difficult for, like, I guess, like, trying to make this happen. And I think that's always been, like, it's every game's or every developer's goal
Right.
to have their game be something like, the next Fortnite or the next Among Us or, anything like that. But even those games
Yeah. Like
typically just,
I was
yeah, go ahead.
I was trying to think this morning. The first thing I was thinking about, I was like, Fortnite. Is Fortnite gonna stay? Or are people just gonna be tired of it? You know what I mean? Are people
Mm-hmm.
already tired of it now? And then it's just it just was at the right time, at the right moment to be a kind of fad, where it hit all the right things: multi-platform, really nice graphics, all kind of support. I think what was it? It's free. It was free, right? So that was always an entry point. And but I think that it started to wane, and I think that we'll remember it, but I don't think it'll be remembered in classics as like some. Again, it has to be good, but then it also has to have classic gameplay that'll stand up to the test of time. And if it's just a regular shooter type thing, does it really?
Mm-hmm. And, like, talking about classic shooters for a second, I think that's another very interesting point because we've seen, just like with every genre, there are games that break the mold in some way, shape, or form. There are a lot of classic platformers that did do something differently. Now, differently doesn't always mean good in a lot of cases, but games that do something differently can help out. But it's always that question as to will people remember that, or in some cases, will they have even played it to begin with? I did on the stream that game Power Slave, which was the what was it, the remaster of the FPS, and it plays very much like a almost like a proto Metroid Prime. It's a first person shooter
Oh,
Metroidvania. And this was
wow.
like 96, 97. Like, this is an
Yeah.
old game.
Old game. Yeah.
And I'm I never heard of it before hearing about it then. I'm sure most of the people never
Mm.
heard about that. Shadow Man, that was remastered last year, is another great example. That
Mhm.
there are a lot of games that blew up, or they did something differently, and in a lot of cases they could very well be ahead of their time in these respects. We of course have mentioned Bloodborne and the whole Soulsborne, but the real old school fans will remember Kingsfield. I never played Kingsfield back in the day,
Me neither.
and like
Me
one of the
neither.
things I see people talk about on Twitter so much is that they kind of feel like the success from software is happening right now really comes from like the rest of the world catching up to them, because like they arguably haven't really
Change.
grown these
Growth.
games. Like, they're not,
Yeah.
and this is not meant to be like a negative to the Soulsborne. Like, they
Mhm.
are very set in their ways in that respect.
Mhm.
And if they were like another developer, if they were being published by EA or Activision, I'm sure they would have demanded all manner of changes and, you
We would have
know,
had a difficulty setting on Dark Souls 2, right? Like our Dark Souls 1, a difficulty setting, map markers,
mhm. Yeah, they would have to have in-game microtransactions and
microtransactions, season pass. Um,
Fortnite dancing. I'm sure, and basically, like, and this is again like why it's so difficult to talk about this stuff. Because if you were to ask somebody, okay, why are they succeeding? Like, what should we do with our game? You can't really, give somebody a list there of, just do this and your soul cycle will pop off like,
yeah.
Elden Ring or Bloodborne or Sekiro.
Hmm.
And it is, again, like, very challenging when we're trying to break these games down like that. Because you can have a niche success blow up, just as you can have these major names just disappear. And what you said earlier about kind of like the popcorn analogy when we talk about Call of Duty, Madden, sports games. Like, if we talk about them from a franchise point of view, they are long lasting.
Yeah.
But again, it's that question of, if you put somebody, you show someone like 10 different Call of Duty screens, will they be able to pick out exactly what games they're from? Whereas you can put somebody next to a Bloodborne and Elden Ring, or, Mario 64 versus Mario Odyssey, they'll know very right away which game is which.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's from the games having, unique tenets. So, and a lot of those games were original. You know what? Let me go back to, you were talking about people talking about the Dark Souls success,
Mm-hmm.
how the studio didn't change. So basically, like even from the first game, like the first game, they've been trying to get to Elden Ring, right? In a way, like, so they basically, like, you can say, okay, what trends do I want to follow or this or that. Dark from Software is teaching you that maybe that's not important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you should just stick to what you're good at and work at that, right? And they worked at what they believed was good and they kept honing at it. Their lore, their combat system, uh, their whole workflow and pipeline, and they just kept crafting and crafting and getting bigger, and eventually the world caught up to them. But they weren't following trends. They weren't saying, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
everybody wants an insane boss battle combo that lasts this really long time and you die and you lose all your souls and it's the work. They didn't think that that's what the market was going for, so they weren't actually searching for the market. So it's like the exact opposite of what most people would tell you. So research your market and see what's, no one, if you I think they even turned it down. Sony, or Sony had it with the original Demon Souls. Do you know the story? I think
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft maybe was trying to publish it and they turned it down, something like that. But they were trying to get it, they couldn't even get it published because it was
Mm-hmm.
so demons. Who's going to want to play a game where you die over and over again and you lose, right? That didn't seem to be marketable at all.
Yeah. And like
Like,
I think Sony tried to like sink the game. Like they didn't
yeah,
care about it at
they didn't
all.
care at all, and it still blew up. Like no matter
Hmm.
what, it got held down in like so many multiple ways that it still succeeded.
Hmm.
So
Yep, and I think what you said there about kind of like ignoring trends, I think is another factor about this. It was like we said, like if you're the first, and if you're the first to do it right and to do it differently, it really does elevate these games. And like if we go back to like the Bloodborne example, like Bloodborne does things very subtly differently from the other games. It has a different theme to it, different lore, and the combat feels different enough to play. And these little things can really go a long way. If we look at like going back to again like first person shooters or even roguelikes, that there are a ton of FPSs, there's a ton of roguelikes and action roguelikes and roguelites out there. But if you ask people, memorable ones, they'll probably point to Doom, Slay the Spire, Spelunky, and maybe we could even argue Binding of Isaac in some circles. But there's a difference again when we see these games kind of enter the popular zeitgeist. And I think that is a major factor in it. That like with Dwarf Fortress, like Dwarf Fortress I think blew up especially not only because of its unique gameplay, but all the stories people have put out about, all the
yeah,
interviews with what is it? Oh, I forget their names. Tornadums and forget their names. I'm sure again the Dwarf
I
Fortress
thought
names.
you didn't interview. I thought you interviewed
I
them.
interviewed one of them, but not
Yeah,
both.
not both.
And when we see these games kind of get to that point, like we said, like in a lot of cases, some of these games may not become commercial successes, and it is unfortunate like that. And like we've said, like there's a difference between a commercial and a critical success. Suda51, I think, would be another good example. Like his games, like Killer 7, No More Heroes,
Heroes.
Shadows of Damned, and many others.
I
Hey,
was such a
Chris.
big No More Heroes fan. Hey, Chris.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was such a big No More Heroes. I love that game. Yes,
yeah,
go ahead. Pseudo 51.
yeah. Like his games, like each one of his games seems to follow the trend that they release. They do horrible commercially, and then like 5 to 8 years later, they'll earn their money back where enough word of mouth will spread that people will
Right,
want to buy it. And
right.
there's not, again, like as we said, like that's not horrible in a sense that the game is bad, the game failed, but it's not the best in terms of being commercial. Let me see. I mean, I can. Oh, let me raise Josh up there. Then maybe that will help. It's kind of hard to tell. Uh,
Yeah, check, check, check. Check, check, check.
Now you're which Josh is louder.
Now,
Yeah. I'm trying to always fun with volume settings. Let me.
yeah, that's the best.
All right.
No More Heroes 3, yeah.
Yeah, I still have to play the latest one. Hopefully they'll bring them over to the PC. Yeah, Draken
Yeah,
said
bring
just
it
as
to the
I.
PC.
And I
Bring it to
think
PC and then we'll play it.
that may also be, I think, another factor here is just the availability.
Availability, right? And as I was looking, I seemed to notice. I said, "Wow, the PC games on the PC seem to last the longest." Like, just yeah, there's some console games here and there and stuff like that. But if you can get it in the same medium on the computer, you've been able to get it on the PC for 30 years or 20 years. You can still get it there, right? But if it was on a console, I might have to rebuy it again or download it again, and it's not quite the same experience because it's been ported or emulated. I might have to do some
Mm-hmm.
illegal ways or whatever to get the exact experience. So yeah, availability definitely plays into it, right? Availability, modability, community, how new it was, like originally about the concept, and then of course how good the game is underneath it all, right? The last part of it, if it's actually even a good game.
Mm-hmm. I had that dream too, Pony. I think we're gonna be dreaming that one for a very long time.
Oh wow, I've kind of gave that one up. I felt like it when they were starting to launch. Nintendo was launching the mobile games. I was like, okay, maybe they're gonna start. putting some of. I'll start seeing Mario Odyssey on the PC, legit. But I don't think so yet. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think so yet. I just saw them. Someone did a copy of like an old Nintendo 64, just like book. It was just or for a game guide, and they had them take it down. It was just like a PDF copy of a game guide, and
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo striked them on it. Pretty hard.
Mm-hmm. And trying to figure out why, even like the smaller games can get into everyone's popularity. Like, I love, for instance, like Banjo and Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. That's one of
Hmm.
my favorite games. And I do think like there is that sense of uniqueness to these titles. That if you can do something that no one's ever seen before, even if people find it polarizing, like with the Demon Souls example, that you will earn that following. But I think the market, that may be another thing we haven't really discussed too much. The market really does have that thing. Wait, did you like it or you didn't like it, Pony? Aw. Yeah, the hardcore Banjo Kazooie fans hate Nuts and Bolts because it's so different. Just like I think the hardcore Final Fantasy fans hate, what was it, 12, I think? The one that was like more like of an MMO light
With the
one.
MMO, I loved it. Oh, that was I love that one so much. I
Mm-hmm.
know there was a lot of hate with it, but you could do so much. Maybe from a game developer
Mm-hmm.
perspective, I was looking at what you could do with your AI. You could basically
Mm-hmm.
like program them to do different things. So it was pretty cool. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
people totally knocked that
Yeah,
fake
and
MMO style.
And just to really piss off all those people, the only reason I played Final Fantasy 12 was because I heard all the Final Fantasy fans hated that one.
Hating it.
And that was the whole reason I played that one all the way through.
What did you think about it? You completed it? What did you
Yeah,
think?
I liked it.
Good. Good. Yeah, it's a great game. The combat was really neat.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a precursor before like they changed the battle system up to like the lightning returns and 15 type combat system.
Yeah. I still need to play 15 again just to see if, by the fact that everyone else hates it, will I love that one.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. The wife has it on her PC right now. She's playing it. She likes it. She likes it.
Nice. Let's see. A little bit of Kazooie. Yeah. And again, like, to me would love it. Yeah, like, for these games that don't have a huge audience, but they still kind of become memorable like that. It is very fascinating to see again, like how these games. I think speedrunning may have also helped us as well. Like, especially I think with the retro game scene, because I see on Twitter like almost
Yeah.
every day someone's posting, "Here's my collection of Xenosaga. Here's my collection of uh, like original adventure games on the NES and so on."
Right. Right. Yeah, like games done quick.
Mm-hmm.
Is it games done quick? The one that
Yeah.
happens every year? Yeah, and that like really I think it brought a whole new, like, most people weren't even aware of those games, and they're like, oh, people are speed running these and competing them, and again, so you create a community around the speed running of these classic games, and so they live on
Mm-hmm.
through just that activity of speed running. So not if you can't even make your game speed runnable, even if they don't speed run, they're going to still speed run it. So
Yeah. And I finished both Contra and Super C too. Really enjoyed those. Could never
wow,
play
man.
the one was like a mission team. It was like Contra Force. I think that's what it was called.
Contra Force, yeah.
Yeah, that one I
Chris,
hated.
Chris, yeah, Chris, you should play FF12. Definitely give it a try.
Hmm.
Beat it through.
And maybe at some point, the what would really piss everyone off is if I go play Final Fantasy VII Remake and I enjoy that one. I could post on Twitter, I love the remake more than the original. I'm sure that won't annoy anyone. But I think ultimately, what makes this, or when we talk about memorable games like this, it's something you can't design around, I guess. Much like how you can't really build your game and think guarantee it's going to become the next big esport. Like, it's something that if you don't design the game at a quality or with a unique mission statement from the get go, you can't force this to happen after the fact.
Right. Right. And then even and there's games that have been like literally like just pushed on being only an esport game or just a speedrunning game. And that kind of doesn't work either because like it still has to be a game, but the game can't be around that like just a simple mechanic, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, Battletoads is
Battletoads,
memorable
it is.
for
It's very memorable
certain reasons, depending
for
upon who
certain
you
reasons.
talk to.
Yeah.
Exactly, Pony. Yeah, that was the next question. Yeah, what was it? Yeah, like with Battletoads, I still watched what was the name of the Mexican runner TMR? He
Oh
did a
yeah.
GDQ where he did the turbo tunnel blindfolded.
Did it blindfolded, bud. Yeah. I was
Hmm. Yeah.
because I was doing the tunnel run like this, like trying to. I couldn't. I
Yeah.
couldn't get it.
I did manage to do it at least normally a few years ago, but yeah, like again, it's very that was a fun thing to watch. And yeah, like speedrunners, and especially people who can like really show off the mastery of these games, I think has certainly helped. So I guess here's another interesting question for you and for the chat. Again, going back to kind of like modern day, do you think that streamers and YouTubers and influencers, do you think that has helped kind of raise like the legitimacy of memorable games for like modern titles? Or do you think that with so many people playing these games, it kind of, I guess, dilutes the mystique of these games? Like we can talk about like the original XCOM or the original Doom today as these forgotten relics. But I mean, if you go to YouTube and type in Ori, or you type in FTL, or Dark Souls, you're gonna get thousands upon thousands of videos of people talking about, and 1,000 people saying Dark Souls is the greatest game ever made,
Right.
and another 1,000 saying Dark Souls is the worst game ever made.
Right. I mean, yeah, like if you go, I just Google. I was doing some research for my game, so I did actually type in just Dark Souls door, I believe, because I was looking for the door animation in there, and it was again just this massive delusion, just of all types of stuff. Dark Souls is this, Dark Souls is that. Why Dark Souls doors are the worst doors ever? Like it just like all kind of stuff. I think eventually like the cream will rise to the crop, right? So people will know like, okay, eventually the audience will tire of watching that game over and over again, or they'll just go somewhere else or whatever. I don't think it actually dilutes it. I think it extends it slightly, but not much. And it really probably depends more on like what value the streamer brings, or the type of streamers that are streaming it that brings to it. Like if they're toxic themselves, or if they're like elevating the game, like the Mexican speedrunner, like that. He's elevating the games because he's speedrunning them, stuff like that. So I guess it just really depends.
So we were saying I need to do some more cursing when I play my games. Just starts cursing at every game that I'm playing and all that.
Yeah.
Hello, 9999.
9.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of indie games, the sheer number of them has kind of hurt things. I think in that respect that it is getting harder for them to stand. I hope you're okay. I think, or are you coughing? Or I
Yeah,
know
no, I'm coughing.
I've had that happen a few times there too. But yeah, like for a lot, like right now, I'm actually recording the 100th indie game showcase video here. So I've been going back and watching all the ones in the playlist and trying to pick out the ones that I've enjoyed the most and the ones that have really stood out. And it is very hard, like, because there are a lot of them that I'm like debating if I'm like literally the only person who ever played it or even just streamed these games. And there are some games that have done really interesting things. But I guess here's the question. Do you have to do everything right? Or do you have to do 75 to 80% of your game right in order for it to blow up? Because I'm like going back to Dwarf Fortress. Like Dwarf Fortress is an amazing game, but it is a hard game to jump into if you don't already have hours of playing it and watching streamers and looking up let's plays and things along those lines.
Yeah, it's daunting. That's the main reason why I haven't even tried to attempt to play it. I know there's a graphical update coming up, and I try to play it, but yeah, definitely very daunting. Excuse me, hold on. Can you continue?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like with to 999's come. Yeah, I loved Zero Ranger too. Well, I did the 1cc run of it as well, which was really crazy. But yeah, like Monolith is another example. Monolith is a fantastic shmup action roguelike that I'm going to predict when I look this up, it has less than 500 reviews on Steam. Let's see if I'm right. Oh no, it's up to 1,340, so it's actually did better than I thought. But that still seems very low for a game of this quality, and we can say that about a lot of the indie games. Hell, we can even say about this channel. People say, "Oh, why are your videos so good, but more people aren't subscribed to you?" There's your shameless plug for everyone to like, subscribe, and comment right there.
That's right. Please like, subscribe.
Yeah, and MDK, like again, like the heyday of Interplay is another big example.
Yeah, man, I actually had that. I went, I bought that. I had the case, everything at MDK, and I played that. I remember that.
Clay Fighter, Earthworm Jim.
Earthworm Jim.
What was it? Neverhood, the old claymation adventure game. People still remember that one. The original Thieves.
Classic Clay Fighter.
Let's see. Yeah, and yeah, like even like games that I'm not a huge fan of, like stuff like Outlast or what was Outcast, Outlast, and Five Nights at Freddy's. Like there are certainly
Five Nights, yeah.
Like games that, again, like when you are the first. Yeah, I know Clay Fighter was such a janky game there. But like when you are the first to do that, in whatever capacity, the first one to reach mainstream, it does elevate these games, I think, much further. And then there was, of course, the rise of Kickstarter. Like you look at stuff like the first 4 or 5 successful Kickstarter games, stuff like Broken Age, FTL, what was it, Planetary Annihilation. But even like Planetary Annihilation, I think that one has kind of fallen off the radar for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, Broken Age, is that still, anybody still remember that? I mean, other than us?
Yeah. I don't know about that one, Chris. There were talks about that maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. There was a whole controversy around the creator of it. It's really hard to tell right now what's happening with that franchise. Yeah, and I think to 9999's point, it's kind of like that weird thing when I see the whole retro gaming scene, that I see people with huge collections of games. I just wonder how many of them actually play all those games. There's a difference between, I think, collecting and experiencing these titles. So something I remember when I went to a GamerCon, but this was back in 2018, 2019. And I saw people were selling all these classic games. I'm just thinking, yeah, that's great, but if I don't have the hookups for it, if I don't have the game console, what is the point for somebody like me to own those games? I mean, I saw the Japanese boxes for SNES games. They're beautiful, by the way. That I think would maybe push me a little bit further, to own some those old classic, and it's true that the United States certainly got shafted when it came to European and Japanese game boxes back in the day.
For sure.
Was Gone Home memorable? Yeah, and again, there are, I guess to throw another, to answer a question with a question, is Dear Esther memorable? That game.
What about The Last of Us?
Yeah. And again, hardcore fans will just immediately come and shout at you, yes, of course it's memorable. But again, when we say memorable in this capacity, we're talking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, even 20, 30, 40 years. Right. Are these games still playable? And I think that's another interesting aspect of it, the playability. Like,
Playability, does it still hold up? Can you still go in there? Is it still fun? Does it still
mhm,
make sense? Does the UI still make sense? And like, if the decisions they made, like 20 years down the line, you're like, oh, well, the UI or like, is any of it still
mhm,
make sense? If it's still playable, that's really, that's a big part of it.
yeah. So here's a question for everyone: Do you think the original X? Do you think XCOM is memorable today? Because it's again like XCOM is one of the greatest games of all time,
Yeah. Hmm.
but it is horrible to go back to.
Yeah.
It is a
Yeah.
painful game, and we can say that about a lot of the golden age of PC games. You know,
I was
old.
actually thinking, like, what could we make a list of like really good games that were the best at the time, but now if you went back to play them, they would just be terrible, and
Mhm,
analyze why, what was so bad, what would made it good at that time, and
mhm,
now it no longer sticks around. I think that would be kind of good. Set up a
yeah.
few games and analyze them that way.
And I think the adventure genre has had that stigma over its head for now, we could say over 30, maybe even like going to 40 years now. That there are a lot of adventure games. The original King's Quest, the LucasArts, like the
Arts.
LucasArts games are considered like golden age adventure games. But I don't know if they would really uh, hold up if we were to
Oh,
try playing today. It's been that difficulty, I think the adventure developers have found in terms of, is there actually a market for adventure games? And when I say a market, I mean to bring in new people versus just kind of, I guess playing the same tune to all the people who grew up playing those games. And I think, again, like going back to the idea of playability, it's why, Mario is still considered one of the gold standards. You can load up Super Mario World, and it is enjoyable as much today as it was back in 1990.
yeah, like 100%. It still feels as good, still
Mm-hmm.
controls as good. It still can elicit the same memories and create new ones at the same time. Yeah, timeless, and it's all about the graphics. Don't age because the graphics are timeless. The control is simple and contained. The verbs are simple and contained and timeless. So all of it together is just like a really nice time capsule of like perfect gameplay and
Mm-hmm.
just all at the right time.
Yeah. And with some of these like older PC games, it reminds me of when I interviewed GOG. This was like 5, 6 years ago, and we were talking about why there is a market for these games. And I remember they were saying that it can come down to several reasons. One being no one's ever done a game like this, and two, there is that nostalgia factor. And I mean, there are a lot of classic PC games. I know Brian Rubin from Space Gamer Jones. He was talking about one Starfield Star something. I mean, Star is something that describes like 10,000 space games
Yeah.
right there. And
Not Star Citizen, right?
no, not that one. This is way back in the day. It was kind of like a proto version of Star Control, and it is that challenge. And one of the topics we have on our list is talking about what developers get wrong when they're trying to modernize retro games. So I don't want to go too far into that into today's topic. But there is that question of if you release the same exact game today
Yeah.
versus when it came out 5, 20, 40 years ago, can it still be playable? And for a lot of these games, they're not, but they still have that hardcore following. Again, this one makes this a very interesting topic because memorable can mean different things to different people. For somebody, memorable is, that 10 out of 10 game, your Ocarina of Time, your Super Mario World. Memorable could also mean, that game that haunts you in your sleep, like the original Jaws or
Oh,
Friday the
yes.
13th, the
Yeah.
game.
I still get goosebumps thinking about Friday the 13th game, man. Like it is. And the Jaws theme music still scares me to this day. The NES version. Yeah.
And then, like, speaking about fighting games, like, when a game does something differently, either good, bad, or neutral, that can also impact it. I remember, what was it? Battle Arena Toshin. It had like an almost like a rogue like fighting game mode. Like you would like explore like a dungeon and you had to upgrade your
Yes,
character.
that's right. That's right. You're talking about the one on the PS1, the
Yeah,
original.
that one.
Yes, yes, man. Battle Arena Shinden. I played that one. Was an amazing game. And they really
Hmm.
you could experiment. I think there was also a Square Enix game that kind of had the same thing too. That you could also explore dungeons, or maybe I'm thinking about Arena Toshinden. I believe that
Hmm.
Tekken did something similar around that vein. I
Hmm.
might be imagining things.
Kyle Sim goes with everything. Yes. Yep, and like Fallout again, like that's another really good point about memorable games. Like I have no real love for classic CRPGs. The Fallouts, the Might and Magics, those I think it was I didn't grow up playing them. I just they just didn't interest me back in the day, and to
Yes, for
try and go
sure.
back and play them today is like getting punched in the face in terms of like trying to use that UI.
Right,
But
right.
for somebody who did grow up and play them, they're they're some of the top tier games. And again, it's that question like to 999's comment, like are dated games, do they still have that same mystique to them? Like again, a Mario or Chrono Trigger or so on.
I think so. I think so. Like I don't know if it's nostalgia, but like if I booted up Chrono Trigger right now, I still feel some of the same feelings that I did when I was a kid and
Hmm.
I booted it up. If I boot up Mario, like I still remember like some of those feelings plus all the ones that I'm doing now. I think it really does. Like I think they really do hold on to that. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and music, especially like good music in the game, will definitely go really far. Like that'll stick with you. I can still. I've said this many times. I'll forget the story. I'll forget many points of the game. But if the music is good, I'll always hum the music in my head. So that always sticks with it.
Hmm. Actually, I typed Geno's theme, the forest theme from Super Mario RPG. Actually,
PG,
the battle theme or the
the
boss
battle.
theme,
Yeah,
and that those two songs are just permanently lodged in my head. Like I can
right.
recall them, even while I'm trying to sleep at night. They'll get in there, and then I won't be able to fall asleep.
That
Yeah.
was a really good game. Love that game.
Hmm. Yeah. And yeah, like having like those very memorable points in a game, like something that can kind of like lodge in the zeitgeist like that. Like one of the more famous things from Fallout would be being able to talk down the final boss. Like that's something that I hear everyone mention at least a few times when they talk about how much they love the original Fallout. Um, Jagged Alliance is another one that people really talk up about. And it was one again I tried to go back and play like 5, 6 years ago, and just way too classic. Yeah, I know, Draken. I'm sad about that too. And that means we'll never only get a Geno amiibo as well. I do have my Shovel Knight amiibo somewhere behind me right now.
Oh wow,
Hmm.
I'm looking for it now.
It could be behind as well. Maybe I should move the amiibos closer one of these days. Just play
Yes.
Sora. Yeah, exactly. Sora's just like Gino. There's another thing that's going to come back to haunt me by saying that on a stream. And I, I guess here's another question for everyone. With the rise of indie games, do you think the indie market has given, I think, a new space for memorable titles? Because again, like going back to the comment about Zero Ranger, that I love Zero Ranger. It is a fantastic game, but it's also a game that I know a lot of people didn't play. Let's see, it is sitting at just under 1,000 reviews, 974. And I do wonder again, like a lot of these indie games, are they ever going to get that chance to like think breathe in terms of like pop culture?
I honestly, I feel like that ship has kind of sailed, like we were talking about uh, previously, where you can do like any kind of uh, any game dev, like back in the Flash days,
Hmm.
around Braid, around those times, I believe. it was possible. Now I think it is so, and there's just like we were talking about before, there's too many games coming out, and so it'll be really hard for that game. So that game would have to just really like just skyrocket to the top and just have to be an enigma of a game, I believe, for it to do that out of an indie space like that. I could be wrong. But just like we were discussing, we were like, okay, well, Shovel Knight, Hollow Knight, are they really going to be that memorable for that long, or were they just cool platformers at the time with really neat art, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, Joshua teleported. Who teleported?
Yeah, and I think 9999's comment, I think that may be a passive smack on me because I played it, but I'm not the big streamer to play it to blow it up, Sally. Yeah, Undertale, and again, like there are games that quality is certainly, I think, a factor in a lot of these cases, and
I think it's a requirement,
mhm.
right? Like it has to be the quality, and then everything else is the factor, right? Like the game has to be good, bar none, regardless. The gameplay has to be something moment to moment that's excitable, that's fun, enjoyable, either something that you can do with your friends or solo, whatever. But above that, I think are the other things that we were talking about, like the modding, community, where it's available, right? Available on if it's available on the PC, definitely helps. And of course the graphics that are chosen, and just I think those are like the main factors that are going to affect it.
Sims for torturing them, yeah, having
Yeah,
that unique
yeah,
system.
yeah. Unique system, new system, and me, same thing. I remember that as well. I had a girlfriend at the time, and that's all she did to her Sims. We're no longer together, but.
Let's see. RC Car Racer.
RC Car Racer. Yeah, like 999 was saying, personally, me as a game developer making a linear experience is probably not like at the top. Even though my game that I'm making right now, Samurai Pig, it as you can say like maybe the story is linear. They're like there's just A to B, but making a truly linear experience like we're talking about, like adventure games or something like that, I think it's a really hard gamble in this current environment with streamers. Like we were talking about, streamers can stream it, ruin the game. So yeah, it takes too long to make them. And again, if you're making that type of genre, you shouldn't be worrying about trends. You should just be making what you want, and might not be worrying about income at that time. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think the idea of stream friendly games, or influencer friendly games, is a huge factor in this, because the games that do blow up, there has to be, I think, something there for the audience today. And I think that's different compared to the games, 15, 20, 30 years ago. That for a lot of these games, they kind of grew that mystique, I think, locally. You tell your friends in school, I just beat this level in Mario, or hey, I'm the one who just finished, I'm like the top player in Street Fighter in the arcade. So it kind of builds that level there. Today, you go on YouTube, you can type in, watch a complete play of the game and go, okay, that's it, move on to the next. Like, games have, I think, a very shorter lifespan in terms of, like, that kind of, I guess, like, pop culture area. Like, they're either all of it or they're none of it.
Yeah, and I was actually like going to post a game in the Discord, but it was like a week or two late, and I was like, maybe I won't post it because I think it's just kind of past its lifespan. And I was sitting there thinking, what is the actual lifespan? Is it like, if it doesn't catch on, is it like 5 seconds and that's it? Like, how long does it last before it leaves people's mind space if it doesn't sink in, right?
Yeah. And like with a lot of these games that are coming out, or a lot of the games that have blown up today, it's just that constant, feed of new titles that it's very hard for games to kind of have that room to breathe. Like Elden Ring may get further just by the fact that it has kind of dominated the conversation completely.
Definitely. I mean, it is definitely dominated. I can't like. There's so many articles when I open up my phone and nothing but Elden Ring articles. You know this. So it is just in the zeitgeist. Everybody's talking about it right now. Um, yeah, I think again, I think it has a real high chance of just being one of those long tail games. But
Mm-hmm.
we will see. We will see if it becomes Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne 2. Bloodborne 2.
Mm-hmm. But we do need a Bloodborne too,
We
of
need a
course.
Bloodborne 2, more importantly. Yeah, that's what I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted.
Yeah, and like with some like the more like artistic games like Journey,
Journey.
again like going back to like Gone Home, stuff like that. Again, like I think timing is always that factor because we can pick like any game and we try to compare it to modern day audiences or modern day viewpoints. It will always have those elements of being dated to it. I'm sure there are people who complain about trying to play Super Mario World these days if they never grew up playing it. They never grew up
Right,
playing Sonic as well.
right. Oh yeah, yeah. I guess if you put someone in front of Sonic 1, they'd be like, "Wow, this is really dodgy controls and it's hard to play with." But if we grew up playing it, we could understand and a little more and be agreeing with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like Highlander Pony was saying, there's a Bloodborne PS1 demake right now, and the demand for that PS1 demake is insane. It's just
Mm-hmm.
wild, like how much interest there is in that game alone. So that's just like a subset of Bloodborne, right? You have Bloodborne uh, tabletop games and all kind of stuff. So the whole Bloodborne thing itself is also just a massive IP.
Mm-hmm. So here's a question for everyone. Do you think that games that are designed explicitly to be like a spiritual successor to a classic game or to kind of carry on the torch of a genre or classic game, do you think they have the potential to be memorable in their own right? Or do you think that it's really just going to cause people to go back and remember the old games to begin
Right.
with?
I think it'll just cause people to go back and remember the old games. Like even if we've talked like if even if I talk Mario with anybody, they're gonna think of the first Mario or Mario World or maybe even Mario 64, but they're not gonna immediately start thinking about Odyssey or Sunshine. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that people immediately go back to the originals, right? So if we're talking about Last of Us 2, probably some people are going to say, yeah, Last of Us 1, right? They'll
Mm-hmm.
be talking about that first.
Yeah. And even then, though, will they still be talking about The Last of Us in 5 years from
5
now,
years.
and
Yeah.
another 10 years from now? And
Question: did you play Last of Us 2?
no, I did
No,
not.
neither did I. Neither did I. And I thought I really loved the first one. I was a huge, massive fan, and I guess just the timing of the second one when it came out, and I just didn't play it at that
Hmm.
time, and that's it.
Yeah, and to Chris's comment about Bloodstain, I mean, Symphony of the Night is still remembered as
Yeah,
the Metroidvania,
the
even probably
the
more than a
Metroid.
lot of the Metroid games.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's classic, and that's from. I mean, what it's just the graphics and the design of it, the Metroidvania. I mean, it was it the original? It wasn't the first, like because
It was not the first Castlevania, of course,
yeah,
but it's definitely the one that, again, a lot of people just
mhm,
once they got a hold of it, they've never let it go. Yeah, Donkey Kong Country, the jungle music, the
mhm.
water theme.
The water theme.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, and yeah, to 999's comment that if you're an indie trying to replicate another game, you're not going to be able to have that same level
yeah.
of polished and, of course,
Polish
budget. Like, you're
budget.
not going to be competing with Nintendo or Bethesda or Sony or so on.
Right, you're right. It's there. It's the we're not in. You're in competition with them, but you can't compete with them. right? You have to compete with them on a different. They can't compete with us in certain realms because they're giant. Triple A's are giant and they're moving forward and straight. It's very hard for them to deviate and change the plan or whatever. Indie games, we can pivot, we can shift around, and we can change things very quick. So we have the ability to try really cool new things that wouldn't get green lighted by a larger company. We can do a lot of experimental things, fun things, different topics, genres, regardless. So we have a lot of room for experimenting, and that's where we can compete with, right? We can compete with in that area. You know, being unique, being different, trying something new, just way out of the box that wouldn't be allowed in a larger corporation. Because we're not a corporation, we're indie. Mighty number 9, yes.
Oh
Mighty
yeah,
number
that's
9.
a nightmare one.
I felt really bad for that one.
Axiom Verge, I think, is another really solid game. And
Slay the Spire?
Yep. Cave Story is another one that I always bring up, like being like
Cave
one of the
Story.
first like quintessential indie games.
I cannot believe I forgot that. I love that game so much, and I can go back and play it. I actually went to do a playthrough about a month or so ago, and it still holds up even better. Like even better. Like if you've played more games, the controls are so tight. It's still fun. The music's great, and the developer's charm is still in it. You know. So.
Yep. Let's see. That's Sonic Roasting Mighty number 9. Yep, and I think there is definitely, like, I think memorable today for games certainly means something differently than memorable games back in, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. Like, we talk about games like Shadow of the Colossus, Eco.
Yeah.
Did they do a third game after Shadow of the Colossus? Oh, yeah, that one where you had, like, the giant creature.
Yeah, the dog, the one with the dog. Jeez.
Let's see. Parcels of YouTubers based on them. Again, I need to be in a video game. Someone needs to put me in one of like those YouTuber-based games. I hope it does come to the PC. And yeah, I think the cross-platform support, I think, is a major factor, at least today, in getting more eyes on these games. The Last Guardian, yeah, I think, yeah, that's one I was thinking of.
The Last Guardian, yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, being the first, using new tech, being incredibly hard, being incredibly different. And, you know, like, it's that same thing, like, if we were to be, I think, very nitpicky, like, there is no such thing as the 100% original game anymore. No. That every game is inspired by, or, you know, elements of something else, whether it's from a UI convention or a UX point of view. Right. That it's hard to stand out in that respect. I mean, with Slay the Spire, like I said in my roguelike book, Slay the Spire was not the first deck-building roguelike. There was Dream Quest. There was that other one that came out that I'm forgetting the name. I think it was like 2015, 2016. That there were other deck-building roguelikes. But Slay the Spire was the first one to hit every single point right. And because of that, it got its name. It got that recognition.
Right. Also, the market was less saturated. It's just continuing to get more and more saturated as we go on. And like you were saying, everything has been done before. And like for indies, it's getting a little hard. Like I'm doing a game about a samurai pig, right? Like that's we're getting probably the last time we can do a game about a samurai pig. Maybe I'll have a sequel. But like we're indies, we're getting like genre crossing and stuff like that. We're pretty much reaching the edge of that too. So like reaching something unique, that's really hard to do nowadays. So, you know, creating up with some entirely new type of gameplay or a new way to handle health or a new way to handle those things are just very rare and hard to come by now. Thomas was alone.
Yeah, I remember Thomas was alone. There's VVVVVVVV.
That's right.
Yeah, it's going to come up with something. Oh, his comment zoomed off there. Yes, 999. Soon they'll come up with something original. Yep, and it's that push. And I think to Draken's comment about the move from 2D to 3D, I mean, 2D was considered the mainstay for indie developers for pretty much like the first half of the 2010s. It really wasn't until, 5, 6 years ago, as engines like Unreal became more popularized, Unity got more powerful,
Mhm.
that more developers have been switching to 3D art and 3D graphics for their games, and now they're running into, I think, very much the same problems of other developers, that how you make a 3D looking game memorable outside of, trying to emulate a PlayStation 1 and
PlayStation 1.
64 graphics.
Right. So I've seen some studios trying to do it like like with fighting games and stuff like that. Or any game, they'll take a 3D and then they'll put like a 2D shader over it and then capture that and make it look 2D when it's still behind the scenes 3D. And I think that's actually what Shovel Knight ended up doing, because just the manpower required to draw each frame is just unsurmountable. So you can't really sit there and say, okay, I'm going to pay this artist $150,000 to draw up all the frames, and we don't know how the game's going to do, how it's going to, you know what I mean? So that's why it's harder to do that. We have to find cheaper workflows, easier workflows that allow us to do more work in a smaller amount of time because we're so limited in budget, right?
Pokemon, of course, blew up
Pokemon,
massively. Factorio.
Factorio.
I guess here's a question: do you think Minecraft will be
Yeah.
memorable, not so much in terms of its pop culture place, but in terms of its mechanics? Because Minecraft itself was based off of another game back in the day, in terms of the whole building. But again, it was the first one to blow up pop culture wise.
I don't know whom, someone mentioned it earlier about Fortnite, that it would be remembered because it was in people's childhood, right? So it was something they were doing with their friends. And so I think in the same way, Minecraft will be something that people will remember, that yes, I did this with my friends. And so it'll be more of that type of feeling that people will still remember it by, and it'll still hold through. It'll be like when they're older, they'll be like, yeah, I remember when we were 12 and we would, do this in Minecraft. And I think that's probably how it'll go down. So
Brand Square, yeah. Branding, again, is, I think, another element of what keeps these games memorable, what developers try to keep these games memorable. Nintendo, of course, why they capitalize on their brand name, and then they will experiment with their design within those specific brands. It's how we got, Mario Party, Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, tennis, soccer, golf, keep going in that regard.
It's right. Very smart. Very, very smart. To do that, to diversify, use your IP, and then try different genres with that same IP. Definitely a safe way to try it, and also a smart way. And you're usually going to probably be guaranteed a little more returns just because it's a known IP. So it's a lot more safer.
Never played Crash Bash.
Crash Bash. I've actually heard really good things about Crash Bash. Kingdom Hearts. So my wife wanted me to say Kingdom Hearts on the show. She said Kingdom Hearts was one, and I said I don't think so.
Oh. What was it?
Sorry, it was H Draken. Sorry.
Yeah. Need the cloud. We all need the cloud.
Yeah, we all need it, bud.
Crash Bash has 4-way pinball. Yep. And when we were looking at like kind of smaller or from the independent space, that it kind of feels like the games that do become memorable, they have to go through that whole cycle of, very small indie game, gets picked up, then gets ported to all the platforms,
Right.
and then reaches that state, like Darkest Dungeon would, I think, certainly be memorable at this point.
Yeah, like that. Like we were saying, because the market's so saturated, it does have to get to that point. Like it has to get ported over to Switch. It has to be everywhere, and heavily marketed for it to stand out, right, and for it to get to that type of exposure, because the saturation is just impossible. It's too much noise for even the most, even if there is, I bet you there's a super unique game out there being made right now, or out there right now on itch that I can download that I've never seen before, has the coolest gameplay, but no one's gonna know. It's not gonna get seen, and it's gonna get buried because of the noise, right? So but that's just the way it is.
Yep, unfortunately. Let's see. Yep. And the RTS responses. Yeah, like trying to again like make this happen on your own. I just don't see it being possible.
No.
Like your game needs to resonate with people. And like we said, like ultimately there's always that difference between commercial success, critical success, and even just, memorability or memorable success.
Right, right. And then of course you can be memorable for the wrong reasons. What was that Sony one? I keep remembering the name. This is the one in the space, the one that was released. Scott Murray, was it Scott Murray? Chat, help me out.
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky, yeah. So memorable for the wrong reasons. And that one still, people still know about that one, I think.
Let's see, and like Vampire Survivors right now is a game that I'm playing that I'm really enjoying. Like, it can happen to very small games, just as it can happen to very big ones. But yeah, like to 999's comment, it's all about content creators now. And yeah, that's definitely a change in how much games are being consumed these days. That you can experience a game just by watching somebody play through it. And it does, I think, really change these conversations. That you don't need to play a game, but it also means it becomes hard to understand, why. Because if you just watch somebody who rages at a game for 20 hours and beats it, that's different than watching somebody who is breaking it down, or watching somebody who's doing a role-playing while they're playing these games.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely changed the game, as we can say, in many different ways. I think we'll still be trying to analyze and look back and see if it was for the good, or if it's just a natural evolution. It's the way we're going to go, and there's no fighting it. But we will see.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we're about an hour 15. We're getting to an hour and 20. I'm starting to run out of topics. I guess I have one more that I want to say, and then if you have any, we'll go with that, and then we'll probably wrap things up. But I guess with like thinking about like GOG in particular, like GOG's catalog has been, or it's the bulk of its catalog has been on classic games, on those games that we can't play anymore, much like pinball games, even arcade titles as well. But the problem with that is that there's only so much. There's only so many classic games until you just run out of them. Do you think that the games today, like we talk again about everything from The Last of Us to Bloodborne to, Mario and so on, will they have the same, I guess, mystique to them that we talk about classic games, the games that we talk about 20 years ago today?
No.
Will we talk about today's games the same way 20 years from now?
I think sadly no. I think because you were talking about the mystique. The mystique's gone, right? Like everybody knows how this. Everybody doesn't know how the sausage is made, but everybody has a kind of idea, right, of how games are made, how everything goes. So there's no more magic. When I was playing video games, I was like, how am I even moving a thing on the screen? This is magic. I don't understand it. And of course, I wanted to become a game developer from then. So there was a mystique, but now I think everybody's grown up into this. Video games, Fortnite is a part of the culture. I think that now it's steering more toward popcorn, and video games will be as memorable. How many movies are memorable in a year? I think it's going to be the same thing. Like maybe there'll be one memorable game, one memorable movie of that year, but every 5 years there'll be one game that's like, okay, that's the memorable game. I think it'll be less, because we have less mystique, and because there's so much out there. I think that it's just going to be way more of a rarity for games to really hit that memorable, timeless factor that we're talking about.
And again, when we talk about memorable, it's not just about quality. Because, we can look at like all the Game of the Year winners of the past decade. How many of them are still going to be talked about in the next 10 years? Because there's always somebody, like we said, there's always going to be another guy jockeying for that position or gunning for them. And they may do something better. They may be the Game of the Year winner of their respective year. But then what's going to happen to them in the next 5 years, and so on. Like, I think it really has changed. And, we could argue better, worse, or somewhere in between.
Right. So, like, okay, for example, like, here, I just pulled it up right here. So let's go with the. Do you want to go with the British? Let's go with the British Game Awards, the BAFTA. So 2020 was Hades. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
2019 was Outer Worlds, and then 2019 was God of War, and 2017 was What Remains of Edith Finch. From those, Hades maybe, but Hades is an amazing, memorable game, but is it going to stand the test of time?
Mm-hmm. And I think again, like, going back to being like the first is another big point here. Like, Hades is not the first action roguelike. It's a very polished, a very unique take on it. But it's not I think the same way we were to describe something like Slay the Spire, or even something like when Super Mario World, the first 16-bit Mario game. I think maybe technology could also be a factor in this respect, that when we look at that jump going from NES to SNES, that's the N64, to the GameCube, PlayStation 1 to 2 to 3, like, these are monumental leaps in terms of how these games look and they behave. And we don't see that today in that respect. I mean, again, like, Elden Ring looks very much like Dark Souls 3, which also looks a lot like Dark Souls 2, which looks like Bloodborne. And pick The Last of Us 2, or pick any, more like human, or like trying to go for like that kind of level quality, they all start to kind of just look alike.
Yeah, and the advances we're making are so micro, right? Like, you can't even. Can you really, like, press me to say what's the difference between a PS5 and a PS4 version of a game? You can say, okay, we have we have ray tracing or something. Okay, cool, but it's the same. From going from, like you were saying, from NES to Super NES, my mind exploded, right? And then from SNES to N64, it exploded again. And that's not happening anymore. Like, so that's definitely one of those things that is affecting that also.
And I think you just threw some shade at all the PlayStation fanboys saying that the games don't look different between 4 and 5.
What I'm saying is that the amount of change is so minimal, right? Like, can you really justify, like, that price point, like the change, like a change in the hardware? It is needed, that we do need to upgrade, but it's so minimal, so minuscule compared to the changes we had before in hardware changes, going from like an 8-bit system to a 16-bit system, 16 to 32. That's like massive in what you're doing, what you're changing.
Yeah. And to Pony's comment about free-to-play games, like League of Legends being like the first, free-to-play esport game to blow up. And, they were operating under a loss for several years. It took them a while before it kind of blew up. And when it did, everything was right in the world for them. Much like, again, what was it? A few other examples. Again, like with From Software, that, their games were good, but they weren't blowing up. And again, like, the market can change. Like, imagine, it would be hilarious. Imagine, what would it be like to release a Dark Souls game in today versus, the first one being back in 2010, 2011, or technically, I think 2009 with Demon Souls.
Right. And you know what? And then also at that time, like, when, like you were saying, the world changes because From Software was doing their own thing, and around that time, everything was getting very Ubisofty, very easy to use. People were getting a little tired of the tutorials. They were getting a little tired of the hand-holding. They were like, I've been gaming for a while. I think I can think for myself. Maybe I can figure out what jump and crouch is. I don't need a 10-minute tutorial before I get into the game. And so the exact opposite was Dark Souls being like, I trust you, I respect you, I know you know how to game. You played Nintendo, right? Go ahead. And so they trust you in that respect, and I think that's it was a sea change that was needed at that time.
Yeah, and to Chris' comment, going from DOS to Windows 95 back in the day. Like, And it does raise that question of what will be the next major tech leap like that. I know,
Yeah.
Windows 11 is out, but is that really, a jump like
No.
going from Windows 7 to Windows 10?
No.
And
It's a small micro advancement, if anything. Like, you really can't even tell, like, beyond this, what's going on. If you look at a Windows 10 and a Windows 11 desktops, pretty much the same. Underneath, there's not a lot much more going on, other than like a lot of Microsoft ugliness in the background. But very small upgrade. PS1 demo discs, yeah, yeah.
Oh yes. And again, that
Never
was pre-internet on your console. If you were going to play a
pre.
game, you were going to a store, go to a Blockbuster.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, you go to the store, get the disc maybe out of a magazine, go to the Blockbuster, peruse the aisles, look for the newest game. Totally different time. Yes.
Yeah. And it's kind of how I think the final thing that I want to say, or we'll be here for another few hours, to what you were just saying earlier about kind of like the mystique of video games. I think that has disappeared, and we can argue, I think, both positively and negatively for that. I mean, today, and this goes back to that article I wrote about the toxic nerd, that today video games are accepted, that they're not this the devil's tool, like they try to make a Dungeons and Dragons and rock music and so on. It is a professional business. Schools are offering game design courses. There are scholarships people are talking about. It is not this thing anymore that is not easily understood. And yeah, again, like the people who grew up playing video games, they're having kids. They're going to jobs. They're working now. So it's that idea for Forbidden Black Magics. Like, it's not this, underground thing that you only hear whispers about. That, it's like a weird thing to me when I talk to librarians and teachers. They're like, oh yeah, I play Doom all the time. Or, I love playing Dark Souls. When I did the video game club like a few weeks ago, like they were all talking about, how much they're loving Elden Ring right now. Again, another place with Elden Ring talk.
I mean, yeah. I mean, right now the gaming market value cap is 198 billion. That's in 2021, and it's by 2027. It's expected to reach 339 billion dollars. That's massive.
Yeah, I think the mobile game scene, they're predicting that to get into the billions, I think, in a few years as well.
Let me check that.
Yeah, exactly, Chris. Again, like I'm not hip with the youth.
Yeah, not hip with the youth. Yeah, so right now the mobile gaming is valued at 121 billion, and then by 2025 is expected to reach 169 billion. So that's still massive. Yeah. That's still massive.
And the point about this is that we're not in that period anymore where people don't know what a video game is. That it's not, again, this thing that you have to look into a magazine or you need to, dig to uncover it. You can type YouTube and you'll find millions of videos on video games. If you want to learn what...
want to find out.
Yeah, that money is what... Yeah, exactly. And Netflix, too. Netflix has been, buying up studios and they want to do their own thing.
That's right. That's right.
There's not this mystery anymore around video games, and it's also why for a lot of games that they tend to play, I think, a little bit more safer these days. That everyone knows what a first-person shooter is, but 40 years ago, nobody knew what that was. This idea of having a first-person perspective was, it was, what the hell is this thing?
Yeah,
if you remember,
that was wild.
There's an infamous review, I think it was on GameStop, when they were arguing about how the hell do you control a camera with an analog stick? Like, what the hell is this thing? This will never take off for, any kind of game. It's just weird. It doesn't feel right.
Right.
Just like how people in 2002 were saying PC gaming was going to die and Xbox was the new computer. Or again, like everyone's favorite take from 2004 with, Steam and digital distribution and how, I don't put a disc in my computer anymore. This is horrible. I'm never going to use Steam.
Right, right. Oh no, I have to have my disc.
Yeah. Let's see.
Games
Yeah, I
are
think kids put you on the Dark Souls track. Yep. It put you into hardcore difficulty right there.
This is true. He's in Battletoads. We're in Battletoads level.
Yep. So with all of that in the way, it's harder I think for a game to, completely blow everyone out of the water. I guess one final, is it going to be memorable? Disco Elysium. For a lot of people, Disco Elysium just, snuck up on them
Yep.
completely out of nowhere.
Mhm.
But is that going to be a game that will be remembered 10 years from now?
That's funny that you bring that up because that was the first one that popped into my head was Disco Elysium when I was
Yeah.
thinking about the topic. I was like, well, what about Disco Elysium? And I said, no, I don't think so. I don't think
I don't think so either. I mean, we can certainly evangelize about these games. We can shout about them from the rooftops.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it's, I think, just a lot harder when you're not truly the first anymore. When the process of game development, like you said, while people don't exactly know 100% of the sausage is being made, we can get towards the sausage factory these days. It's not the same, 30, 35 years ago when, how are you going to learn about a video game? You would read maybe a very short piece in a magazine, and that was it.
Yeah, it was slim pickings back then to get anything. I mean, we really had to dig and dig and dig and research to find anything, and there was nothing there. Now, whatever you want to know, whatever you want to see, you don't even you don't want to play the game, you can watch the game. You want to watch you can watch a streamer, you can watch an 4 hour deep dive on someone has a 4 hour deep dive on the game you can watch on YouTube. Someone's raging about it, like you said. Someone's just playing it normally. So any way you can consume the video game, you can consume them in any way now, right? So you from you playing them, from you digesting them, you digesting them through other people. It doesn't matter. The whole game has changed there.
Yeah, and yeah, to Chris's comment, if it's a mid to long form game, it's very rare for me to finish that one.
Yeah,
unless it's my 10 out of 10. It took me about 100 hours to beat Library of Ruina last year, and that was my #1 game. But for a lot of those games out there, I usually play until I kind of feel like, okay, I've gotten my fill. I know what this game is.
Right.
Playing it anymore would just be, beating a dead horse.
Right, yeah. Consuming the padding. I'm just eating up all the padding that's in here. But I got the gist of it now. And that's where I'm at, too. It's very hard for me. I think if I say the amount of games, God of War, the last remake probably was, and then Bloodborne, really not a lot that I've beaten to completion. Played a ton, but once I figure out what the gameplay loop is, what I need to know, unless there's something like you said that it's just I have to, it really, really pulls me in, I will beat it through completion. But even then, it's hard to keep me through.
Yep. And like we said, it's not something when we talk about memorability like this, it's not something that can actively be planned for. But for these games, there's typically, that sense that it's firing on all cylinders. That when I spoke with Ernest Adams, we were talking about kind of harmonizing game design, when everything is working in sync, and it elevates that title to somewhere that it, if the art wasn't that good, would have been lost on it.
Yeah, it just everything, like you were saying, everything has to hit. It has to be at the right time, right? It has to be at the right time, and probably not really. I think most of these games aren't really following trends. They were just kind of doing their own thing, and then it became the trend, right?
Yeah.
Or that game became the trend. And so, they can build a community. It's new, may not be new. Usually it's new, but if it's not, it did it in the right way. It builds up a community, and then modding, speed running, something that allows it to extend its life.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless. Like even with the old games, we were talking about games done quick is extending those old games just by bringing them to life. And so they're creating whole speedrunning communities on like DuckTales speedrunning or Super Mario speedrunning just from that. So it like brings it back up again into the nomenclature.
Yeah. I guess a thought that just popped into my head about like with games done quick and speedrunning. I would like to see somebody do like maybe like master play of games. Like not so much like kind of like the reverse of a speed run. Instead of trying to play a game as quickly as possible, just show the game off at like the most optimized. Show it off at kind of like that level of adoration that you have for this game. Show that to other people. Because I was thinking again back to 9999's comment about Zero Ranger. Zero Ranger is a fantastic game. I don't see it being speedrun friendly. But I could imagine, people, somebody sitting there going, I can show you how to beat this game. Yeah, like a hitless run. Like, show somebody, like, what it's like to play these games at the most highest level possible. Because I think that's how a lot of esports have blown up. That you can watch Grandmaster Street Fighter play, and it is nothing like what you and your friend could do in your home or at an arcade. Or, Grandmaster League of Legends, or Counter-Strike, and so on. And it definitely gives these games, and I think that's kind of where that mystique, or a different level of mystique comes in. That you can't show like a game like that, in a speedrun setting, but you can show it off in kind of like, I guess almost like that channel, like Turner Classic Movies, like when they have like somebody like historian who's talking about why this movie is being remembered, what it did differently.
Definitely.
Is that game Killer Instinct, Pony?
No, it's Clay Fighter, Pony. Clay Fighter.
Rise of the Robots. There we go. Yeah. Oh, another one that just popped into my head, another classic, the Chaos Engine, from way back from the Bitmap Brothers. One of the first games that have two-player AI co-op in it. And, like, that's another interesting game that it kind of occupies that weird place. Oh, Shaq Fu, exactly.
Yeah, Shaq Fu. I had that. I definitely had that.
I rented that, never owned it.
A lot of Killer Instinct in here. A lot of Killer Instinct fans. So I think we're finding out that Killer Instinct is very memorable.
All right, but I think, unless I want to just keep rambling on about games, I think I've hit my point for a topic. So anything from you?
I think so. I actually forgot the last topic that I was going to spin. So I think that's it for me now.
Oh, I got one. How about Michael Jordan, Chaos in the Windy City? I remember playing that one.
Yes, that's right. That's a good one.
I played that one on stream. That was a painful one by the end of it.
I'll go back and watch that one.
But yeah, I think let us wrap things up here for this week. And for people watching, if you can think of other memorable games for good, bad, or whatever reasons, let us know in the comments down below.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so anything that you got on this topic, please let us know. Just leave it in the comments. Join in the Discord, interact, talk with us. Let us know what's going on. We're here.
Yeah, Moonwalker is another fun one. I think I have that on the Genesis collection or the ROM.
It's actually not that bad. I think like the first level or so isn't too bad. I think it gets a little weird, but yeah.
Oh, yes. And if you want to follow everything Game Wisdom related, there are all the links up there in the upper right. Twitter, Discord, all that. You'll also find links to my books and such down below as well. And for you, Joshua, where can people find you?
Just find me on Twitter, and that links to everything. So that's at casual, CASUL_scrub. Links will be down there below. And then you can just find me there, follow me, Samurai Pig Development, and see what's going on.
Yep, we will be back next Saturday around 5 p.m. ET. And if you have any topics or suggestions for topics for future shows, let us know here on the Discord. Whatever. Smurfs on this nest. Rocky and Bullwinkle. Everyone needs to play that one, just so I'm not the only one who suffered through it. Let's see. Oh yeah, do that speed run that one. Super fast. Yeah, we can answer that one in like 5 seconds.
Got that. Lion King. Lion King. I was just about to say that. Chris beat me to the punch.
Aladdin too.
Aladdin.
The stream will just like kind of end with like our voice going out, just like naming classic games.
Naming classic games.
All right, everyone. That will do it. So, as always, come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where is in the art and science of games. And until next time, everybody, have a great rest of your weekend.
We'll see ya.